are, you know,
thank you all for joining us for the innovation sessions round or session 2. There's 5 of these going on right now. We've, I think, gone from 2 to 3 to 5 in the last year at Charleston Conference. So we have some amazing panelists, 7 total people who are presenting 4 different sessions. My name is Sandy Avila. I'm the moderator for today. I am the Digital Library Sales Manager for SPIE. International Society for Optics and Photonics. This is my 3rd year doing this, and I love being able to be a part of some amazing speakers. So I'm going to go ahead and announce everybody's presentations, give some bios, and then we're going to have them come up for 10 minutes and do their presentations. We're going to be on a strict time. It's almost like a lightning round, but 10 minutes per speaker session. We've got 3 people for 1 presentation, so it's a group effort here. We will hold all questions till the end, please, so make sure that you're jotting down anything you've got for any particular panelist or group of panelists.
Having said that,
I will help moderate those questions. We do want to make sure that every single group of presenters gets a chance to have a question. So I might have to interject and make sure we ask equally questions across all of the 4 presentations. So just know those are going to be the things that I'm supposed to keep us doing. Okay? But I think you're going to be in for a great set of speakers too. So for our first speaker panelist, Richard Berskowitz, his presentation is titled, and it's up on the screen, From ChatGPT to CatGPT, the Implications of Artificial Intelligence on Library Cataloging. Richard is Carlow University's Instruction and Outreach Librarian. He is a graduate of Washington and Jefferson College and Dominican University. Prior to joining the university, he was employed at Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, Crafton Public Library, and River Forest Public Library. Previous speaking engagements include presentations on library resources and technology at Carlow University's Summer Institute, Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh, Crafton Public Library, and the Western Pennsylvania West Virginia chapter of the ACRL Library. Our second set of panelists are Jesper Solheim Johansson and Christian Headley with their presentation titled Investigating Librarian Perspectives on Generative AI, Preliminary Findings from an R&D Project.
Yeah, I guess
their librarian partner speaker, Lars
Begenschau
from the University of Tromsø, excuse my mispronunciations, could not attend, though maybe provide some more details about that. Jesper is a psychologist and user researcher at Keenius. He focuses on understanding how individuals interact with and seek information online, particularly emphasizing the role of AI technology in academic searches. He has been involved in several innovation projects between Keenius and academic libraries over the past 3 years, and is a strong proponent of close collaboration between tech developers and the library. Christian Headley is leading Keenius' efforts in customer success as he spends his time helping librarians and faculty make the most of Keenius' research recommendation tool. According to Christian, understanding what they hope to achieve and how is vital to offering meaningful support. With experience in supporting technology from Google and large-scale rollout projects from time as management consultant, Christian enjoys the intersection that occurs at Keenius. Our third set of panelists, speakers are Joy DeVos, Michael Carmichael, and Ben Naughton-Rumbo with the presentation titled, Are We Virtually There Yet? VR trends in higher ed, what it means for the library. Joy is an associate professor and the extended reality gaming librarian at the Mitchell Memorial Library at Mississippi State University.
You know what I mean? And I can think of just any number of works like that, wherein, you know, looking at a MARC record, for example, and we see it just saying, okay, well, this is a work of, I don't know,
besides VR, her research also includes video games and AI.
If anything, what's
Currently,
telling
she
us,
serves
okay,
as the co-chair of the AI and
cool,
machine
but we're
learning
maybe not
interest
quite
group
there
of
yet with
CORE,
it. So yeah, no, I mean, I'm with both you and Lucy.
Michael
if
is a
that
senior
makes any
director,
sense,
editorial
you know?
at
I
Sage
love
Publishing and is
cataloging,
based
and I
in
love
Toronto,
that
Canada.
moment where
He has worked at
you're
Sage
like,
for
okay,
25 years in the area of print,
what?
Digital and
How
online
do
products
I
for the
assign,
global
you know,
higher
this
education and
tag
academic
to
market.
it? You know,
In 2022, Michael started to oversee the award-winning Sage Research Methods
alternative
product,
rock?
the
Well,
line
that's
for the
kind of a discernment
library's
thing
market
right there.
alongside
Do
the
I call
global
David
product
Bowie's
team
Low
at
a
Sage
glam
Video.
rock album?
Most
Well, it's not
recently,
really
Michael
a
has been
glam
looking
rock
at the world of
album, even
virtual
though
reality
people talk
and
about Bowie
developing
as
key
that.
partnerships,
But
both academic
ChatGPT
and
called it a
industry.
glam
And in
rock record,
2023, he
right?
worked closely
Because
with
it knows
VR developer
it said
Body
David
Swaps
Bowie,
to
you know,
launch a new
glam rock,
series of
etc.
modules on
Right?
negotiation
But
and
anyone,
conflict
I
management.
see you left. I'm a big
Ben
David
is the
Bowie
commercial
fan,
director
and
for
anyone
Body
who knows
Swaps.
this record,
Ben
Low,
has over 10
you know,
years of
that's
experience
kind
in
of a
launching,
weird
running,
album.
and managing
Certainly not a
edtech
glam
startups,
album, but
both in the
you know,
US
it
and
shows,
UK.
right?
Ben has a wealth of insights and stories to share.
There are
Today,
those
he focuses
moments
on delivering
where
Body Swap's mission,
someone with
which is to
expertise,
empower
someone
learners
with
to master
knowledge
the
can
essential
look back
soft
and say,
skills
okay,
required to be
well, why did it
successful
say
in
that?
today's world. And our closing panelist speaker is Gretchen.
So we have to actually stop that conversation. So sorry. We are actually at time, but I did want to offer the other two sets of panelists to answer questions. So if you have to leave, I guess you can, but I did want to provide
She works at the Center for Open Science
for the Kenius
Science Framework, and is an
considering
adjunct professor
growth,
of Penn West
how
Clarion
have
University's
collaborations with
Department of
librarians
Information and Library
evolved
Science.
over time, and
Try to
especially
do that
with
quickly. Let's
increasing
give them all a
interest in
round of
AI.
applause. Welcome. And Richard?
Thanks very much. So I think in terms
Hi, folks. Thank you so much to Sandy for that great introduction. My name is Richard Brustowitz, and I am the Instruction and Outreach Librarian at Carlow University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I'm here to just take a look at some of the ways in which cataloging and other metadata records can potentially be impacted anyway by tools like ChatGPT and Generative AI. So to just give a little overview, we're going to give a little introduction, discuss some of the controversial issues of this, what it brings to the table, a case study, and some of the challenges and limitations, a potential human-AI collaboration model within this context, some ideas for looking ahead and opportunities for improvement, and then my concluding thoughts. So first, as we stand on the cusp of technological transformation, various sectors, including library and information science, are feeling AI's ripple effects. The integration of AI in these fields has sparked as much debate as it has excitement. The crux of the controversy surrounding the integration of AI in cataloging hinges on three main concerns. The fear of automation leading to job losses, concerns over the devaluation of catalogers' expertise, and skepticism about the accuracy of AI-generated records. These concerns, while understandable, may also stem from apprehensions rather than actual potential of these tools. So my intention is to demystify some of these aspects and to view the complete picture, acknowledging the utility of AI as a tool to augment human expertise. Oh dear. There we go. So first of all, what AI brings to the table? First, generative AI, particularly models like ChatGPT, offers speed and consistency in handling especially repetitive tasks. It also has a knack for multilingual processing. So imagine that you could harness this for, say, preliminary cataloging tasks or cataloging tasks, say, in different languages. It also offers efficiency in large-scale operations. AI tools can process and organize vast amounts of data at a speed that's just unattainable for most human beings. This efficiency can be particularly beneficial in large-scale cataloging operations and allow for more extensive collections. It also offers consistency and accuracy. While human input is invaluable for insight and discernment, AI tools can provide uniformity in certain aspects of metadata creation, minimizing some of the repetitive task or formulaic aspects. It ensures that similar standards and rules are applied across the board and enhances the overall quality and reliability of catalogs. Of course, the advanced multilingual support, given AI's advanced natural language processing abilities, can support a wide variety of language. This is especially crucial in diverse linguistic communities and for libraries with international resources, ensuring accessibility and inclusivity. Finally, generative AI models can learn and adapt over time, becoming more refined and attuned to specific users' needs and preferences. You can use these to help predict future trends and needs based on past data, thus helping libraries remain ahead of the curve. All right, so let's explore some of the implications on a broader scale. When I initially did the paper that inspired this, I set out with a clear objective, just to explore the potential ChatGPT specifically has in streamlining cataloging in a small library. Just for some background, at Carlow, we have 2 librarians full-time on staff, and so like many places where, shall we say, resources are at a minimum or are at a are not always readily available, we sometimes have to think creatively. And sometimes that can lead us to, looking into this. And so that's really what kind of instigated this project. So the outcomes were telling. ChatGPT demonstrated efficiency in I should say, generating specifically the standards for MARC records. It made some errors within there, but we'll take a little bit closer look at that. Instances of mismatched subjects and classifications were notable, affirming the need for human oversight. Challenges: the road was bumpy. I grappled with the learning curve of these AI resources and struggled with complex semantic understandings and its intricacies of subjective interpretation inherent in cataloging. This necessitated a recalibration of my approach. The librarian's role morphed into one of guidance and correction, working in tandem with this technology, not against it. So implications. The implications are broad and deep, sparking conversations about AI's ethical integration, the preservation of professional integrity, and the evolving professional landscape of library and information science. All right, so this is just a sample. So the one on the left is a ChatGPT generated one. Now, for instance, field 40, we can take a look at that, and it has a bunch of just garbage in it, basically, right? Telling us that it's DLC, DLC, DLC. The moment I saw that, I actually thought of video games. Because they'll tell us, you know, you have downloadable content, et cetera. So as we can see here, this is not a perfect record, not in the slightest. However, what was most impressive to me was its ability to sit there and spit out a record that got the basics of the field and was able to extract basics of metadata correctly. Now, if we take a look at the one on the right, one provided by a professional cataloger, we see that this is, of course, something that is a far more comprehensive and effective record. However, what stands out to me is that with this item on the left, even though, like, for instance, it wasn't able to extract proper content on, say, the dimensions of the work, et cetera, it was able to do a pretty darn good job. And this was its November edition, I believe, and now it does it quite better. But so this proves, first of all, that the content here isn't perfect. It isn't going to be replacing human catalogers. However, as a starting point, especially for under-resourced institutions, this can be quite useful. Okay, so challenges and limitations. First, accuracy and reliability. While AI can generate records swiftly, they might not always be perfect. The mitigation here is iterative refinement, thus improving models continuously with expert feedback. Second, job displacement. It's essential to emphasize that AI is not going to is here to augment human roles and not replace them. Third, ethical concerns, such as biases in data and algorithms, are real. We can navigate these by implementing ethical AI practices that are inclusive and fair. It's also worth mentioning, too, that the records that it was trained on, ChatGPT, OpenAI trained this on OCLC's data. One has to wonder how many of just the persons in this room, right, have contributed, at least indirectly, to its ability to create these records in the first place. That's, you know, an entirely different can of worms, I suppose, right? But that's another serious ethical consideration. From whom did this work occur, and how do we properly credit it, given that, you know, we have a resource that was trained on material that librarians, that metadata experts, et cetera, created, and that is then spitting out their information, their created intellectual property, and, you know, basically just not providing any proper citation formats for that. Fourth, technological barriers can limit access or lead resistance. Education and training can empower professionals to adapt and thrive. Last, meeting quality standards is critical. By collaborating with cataloging and metadata experts, we can ensure that AI-generated records meet these required standards. So, areas of growth. Continuous learning and adaptation. Let's imagine a world where AI tools continuously refine themselves, drawing from their interactions with catalogers, resulting in ever-improving MARC records. Two, collaboration and integration. We can envision a synergy between AI developers and catalogers, creating a harmonized workflow that brings the best of both worlds. Ethical and inclusive practices. AI isn't without its challenges, so of course we need to address biases as mentioned. Accessibility and user experiences. So speaking of inclusivity, ChatGPT also offers now a completely voice-controlled interface and can actually speak right back to you. So this is a particularly handy tool for persons potentially with certain disabilities, with accessibility needs, and so on. And so it really can open up the door to a lot of different ways of interacting with a tool like this. And then finally, validation and quality assurance. The bedrock of any cataloging tool is ensuring that the records meet rigorous quality standards. And that really would be a key role for librarians, for metadata experts, and catalogers. So we can just take a look at this in, rather quickly. For instance, a potential model, we could use AI tools as a foundational aid for quick information gathering. We can use these as a tool for critical engagement to encourage scrutiny. Say, for instance, with students reviewing a ChatGPT-generated record to identify, for instance, errors that it might have. We can use it as an efficiency boost, especially in small institutions where workflows are such that things overlap with one another quite a bit, that can be very handy. It can also underline specialist intervention and guide skills applications. Finally, through its learning and adaptation, the iterative improvement process of AI tools can really just help us to enhance best practices. Every refinement we make to these records feeds back into the system, enhancing its capabilities and best practices. So before I conclude, this is just a quote that really kind of inspired me when I was reading Cernisek and Williams' Inventing the Future. It feels like 100 years ago. One of the topics that they discussed is automation really as a tool to liberate us from work itself, which is a great thing, right? We can either think of AI tools, we can think of automation as something that is going to supplant human labor, supplant human skill and knowledge, or really just as a tool to supplement it and to make our lives easier and more straightforward. And really just depending on how we take this, right? A more democratic development of these tools, I think it can really be used to instead make our lives a lot easier rather than doing something like replacing catalogers, which, let's face it, isn't going to happen. Yeah. So yeah, in conclusion, ChatGPT is here to just can interestingly augment cataloging. It's certainly not going to replace it, though. It does offer the ability to produce pretty efficient records and quite quickly. It offers a tool for continuous AI development, so we can offer learning, adaptation, and ethical practices. And then collaboration and accessibility. Integration and collaboration. It'd help if I could find the pointer. It just disappeared. Press a button. There we go. Well, whatever. Good enough. So yes, an integration and collaboration, right? We can this really lead to more accessible tools, right? And then finally, as I keep saying, ethical considerations are important when we talk about the training data that go into, say, if one is interested in using a large language model to generate, say, MARC records or whatever else. Just got to make sure that, who's generating that information in the first place, and how can we make sure that there aren't biases in it? And again, that's where really the role of cataloging and metadata experts comes in as well. So, okay, we shouldn't be viewing AI as a threat, but a potential liberation, redefining professional landscape. Cataloging tools, the future of cataloging tools holds potential for improved collaboration between human expertise and technological innovation. Let's shape it together. Thank you all so much.
So can you all hear me okay? Hopefully so. I'll stand a little closer. Thank you very much for joining us today. Some really good points there from the last speaker. We're here to talk a bit about our experience and our findings from a R&D project that we did as an AI startup with a university library. So unfortunately, our colleague in this research, Lars, wasn't able to be here, but from the University of Tromsø. So it was a really interesting project that we had, looking at the perspectives on generative AI from our perspective and then from a lot of university librarians. Probably good to give a little bit of background on what the three of us, including Lars, have done in the past. So our startup is using AI at the moment in part of a product that is fully accessible at the moment, which recommends academic research based on the text of a document that somebody is writing or reading. So we've been working on that for many years, and we have a lot of experience working with the University of Tromsø and lots of other universities to develop that. So we have had a positive experience in the past with collaboration. For this particular project that we were working on, a little bit of maybe if we cast our mind back to when this was happening and when ChatGPT was coming out and other generative tools, this front cover from a newspaper in the UK perhaps kind of sums up a little bit of the feeling around it. So a bit of panic, and Lars could probably speak to this better, but the university libraries and other institutions were coming under a lot of pressure from faculty and patrons in general to answer questions, difficult questions about generative AI and what this meant for them and their work. So we were getting questions from universities and libraries about this, because it's kind of a bit more of our field as opposed to theirs. And we realized that there was really a gap in the literature around this, around the tool in the context of research and also for librarians specifically. So we felt we'd had positive collaboration in the past, and we decided to start this project. For the project itself, what we did was set up 5 workshops tailored to different time zones. So everything was done virtually. We had 21 different institutions from 9 countries. In no specific order, we have the US, New Zealand, Finland, UAE, UK, Denmark, Sweden, Singapore, and Norway. So a lot of late nights and early mornings for us, but it was really worth it. We had 52 participants that joined to share their thoughts. They were 2-hour-long workshops and very collaborative. Everyone was taking part. So the participants were there to discuss their concerns and hopes for Gen AI in the library. So it was great for them to be able to speak to each other as well. They also rated different hypothetical use cases of generative AI on ethical dimensions, so how ethical they felt it was for users to use the technology in that way. And then from our side as the startup, we were able to create a quick prototype that incorporated the technology into something that's pretty similar to our tool in setup. And they were able to actually play with it in a kind of realistic setting, which I think was really helpful for them. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jesper to talk a bit about the findings from our project.
Thank you very much, Christian. Yeah, so from the project, we got a lot of data and a lot of material to work with. So I'm going to show you a few selected findings now. But yeah, the goal of the project was for us to better understand librarians' perspective on generative AI. So what we did in that first exercise was to discuss 3 topics related to adopting generative AI in the library. So first we discussed concerns about actually adopting it. Then we discussed concerns about not adopting it. And then lastly, discussed interventions to eventually navigate these concerns. So we did a qualitative analysis of like all the sticky notes that came up during the session. And we identified 24 themes. And as you can see on this figure on the left-hand side here, the concept of adopting generative AI elicited the most concerns. Maybe not very surprising, but there were a lot of interesting themes within that category. Looking at the concerns to not adopt generative AI, a few of them were associated with becoming less influential, which we thought was very interesting, both in terms of losing out maybe on opportunities to influence patrons, students, to learn them how to use these tools properly, but also losing out on the opportunity to influence vendors or tech developers that are actually developing the technology. And a key word for possible interventions to navigate this was education, both in terms of them wanted to be more knowledgeable about generative AI, but also sort of maybe taking the role of an expert within the library so that they could teach students and researchers about this. Yeah, and the second activity that Christian mentioned was really interesting, where we came up with 8 hypothetical use cases of large language models in a research context. So all of those were fairly easily or fairly feasible in a technical regard, but we really wanted to see how the librarians felt about the ethicality of it. So what we did was presenting them these 8 use cases, and they rated each of them on a 1 to 5 point scale, ranging from highly unethical to highly ethical. And this graph shows the results. I'm not going to go through each of them, but getting feedback on the language in a text and getting help from a generative AI to learn more about a topic was rated the highest. And you can see text generation based on like prompt, instruction, and a generative AI to imitate a profession had the lowest rating. Another really interesting notion, though, was the mixed opinions. So the lines in this graph, they indicate the standard deviation. And for some of them, for instance, feedback on text structure, so the structure of the text, had a lot of mixed opinions. And that showcases also there's not really a right or wrong answer. It can vary a lot, even in between like-minded librarians. So what does this really mean if we gonna look at it from a more overarching level? We saw that a lot of the librarians really acknowledged opportunities and benefits with generative AI, but also that there was a healthy skepticism towards it. And I think are the first results that I showed with the concerns related to adopting it really shows that. Also that many librarians want to become more knowledgeable, both to navigate the landscape better, but also to support their institution and patrons, basically. So for us, this project also highlighted the challenge in actually assessing generative AI applications, especially from a user perspective, because outcomes and ethics, they vary greatly with the context. Even for one individual user, it can feel very different at one point compared to the day after, depending on the information need and so on. So where do we go from here? First of all, it's been great to attend the Charleston conference. We had a poster presentation a few days ago about this topic. Within Kenius, we are using these learnings as a compass for further product development. So when we look into potential LLM applications into our tool, we're revisiting some of the learnings we got from this project. Also, building on the project and these learnings, we have submitted a joint application for research funding to the Norwegian Research Council, together with the University of Cambridge in the UK and Oslo Metropolitan University, where we're going to look, or hopefully going to look more specifically into how large language models can augment recommender systems, which is what we are developing right now at Kenius. So yeah, we are more than happy to share details from the project with those who are interested. We have the poster and also some data available for those interested. So yeah, we will stay around after the session.
Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Carmichael from Sage. I'm really pleased to be here. Can you hear me okay? I'm up here really just to introduce our lightning talk on virtual reality. Are we virtually there yet? Whoops, that link's not working. What has happened? We'll be with you in one moment. There we go. Okay. So thank you very much for having us today and for that lovely warm introduction at the beginning, Sandy. Yes, we have 10 minutes to give a brief overview of some higher education trends for VR, which is not a lot of time. So if you want to speak to me afterwards or after the conference, I'll be very happy to talk a bit more about some of the data and research that we'll be presenting and some of the other insights. But we're also specifically here to give some librarian insights thanks to Joy DeBose on our panel, who will follow me up here. So Sage, like some other vendors out there, has started its voyage into the wonderful world of educational VR. As some of you might have seen through the release last month, as Sandy mentioned, of our new modular series on negotiation and conflict management with body swaps. And the reason for this is in part because of the paucity of good educational VR material available, with consumer-facing content mostly dominating classrooms instructional use at the moment. But also because research indicates that attitudes towards VR are shifting to be more positive. And on screen is just a sort of an assembly of some faculty and librarian data from some qualitative and survey research projects that we've been running over the course of the summer. And again, as I said, we've got lots more that we can share, but I obviously don't have time to go into too much here. But we've been definitely very interested in following trends in VR in the educational space, and particularly around the skills and the pedagogical benefits, but also I think trying to characterize where the librarian is and where the library is in terms of the user journey as well. So as I was saying, I think attitudes are shifting, I think, to be more positive. Yes, there are definitely challenges and barriers in place on cost, equipment, and accessibility. But I think research that we've led and others have led, and there's lots of actual published academic research as well, is showing that there are some definitely major sort of pedagogical benefits around VR in support of what you might call soft or human skills, particularly, notably on communication and problem solving. VR was beautifully characterized in one of our summer qualitative interviews with faculty as the empathy engine. I put the quote on screen: the empathy engine that facilitates a deeper learning experience by engaging a physical, mental, and emotional connection to the content. So it's really kind of supercharging experiential learning in many respects, and it allows users to really see things from different and other people's perspectives very, very powerfully. But what does this mean for the librarian, of course? If it is on the rise, and if it is developing, and if the adoption habits do change, perhaps in the next 3-4 years or so, what does this mean for the role and the responsibility of the librarian in the center of that, to help manage and deliver on that for its patrons across campus? Something else we know is that currently VR is not a big part of the ecosystem of the academic library, and so I mean, this might well change, or it could change, but there are obviously there's lots of complexity around that, and how that might manifest itself in the future. And so for that, I'll hand over to Joy to dive into this some more.
All right, I'm a little shorter, so give me a minute. So good morning, everyone, and as Michael said, my name is Joy DeBose, and I am the Extended Reality and Gaming Librarian at Mississippi State University. New title, so if you want to know all about that, catch me after the session. I'll talk your ears off about it. So, and I work at Mississippi State University. So much of my research has focused on VR and its use by libraries and academic institutions. I have found that many libraries are hesitant to incorporate VR into their systems and programming for a variety of reasons. And we lost it again. Yay. Okay, well, I'm gonna keep talking because we're on a schedule. So many feel that the technology is too new. We got it. Or too expensive, or that there is no programming available for their universities. Some even feel that students and faculty are not interested in it, or that it won't be used. And I'm happy to try and dispel some of those concerns. It's gonna work again? It is. So when it comes to VR history, VR is not new. And in fact, it can be traced back to the 1950s and 1960s with the Helig Sensorama and the Sword of Damocles. The term virtual reality was in fact coined in the 1980s. For a bit of reference, AI was first developed in the 1940s. So VR is not a new, unproven technology. In the past few years, it has become more available and more affordable to researchers and institutions. As such, there is a wide range of VR systems and headsets that can be purchased. While some, like the HTC Vive, can range from over $700 to $1,000, many are less expensive and affordable, such as the MetaQuest 2 and now the new MetaQuest 3. These systems can also access the programming of the now sadly discontinued Oculus Rift. They can do this through the certain HDMI port. To meet some VR needs, some libraries and institutions have relied on systems that require a smartphone. While this may be cost effective, they are not long lasting. Both the Gear and the Google Cardboard were phone-based VR systems that have been discontinued by their creator. In case of the Gear, after certain phone upgrades, it's no longer compatible with the phone and it can't be used. It's basically a paperweight. So while less expensive systems are available, there needs to be a balance between affordability and quality. The last concern is the fact there may be a limited interest or limited programming. Virtual reality has captured the imagination of many students and faculty. Indeed, in my role as the Extended Reality and Gaming Librarian at MSU, I have found that many faculty members are interested in VR possibilities for their classes. This has led to many islands of VR of interest that are all spread out and they're not working together. In fact, many times they don't know each other exists. So it gives the librarian a chance to redefine programming and outreach to these various little islands and create a networking cohort with the library itself as the center. And while VR can disrupt traditional workflow, libraries have risen to the occasion when other technologies were released by trying them out and supporting the needs and wants of their patrons and faculty members. It wasn't so long ago that librarians were wondering about console gaming, e-materials, playaways, and Blu-rays. In fact, I was a cataloger for many years. I can't tell you how many times catalogers freaked out, oh, new technology, and we figured it out in 2 weeks. So librarians have always been good in rising to the challenge. To make VR more welcoming to their patrons, librarians should find a program that they are interested in and play it. Get to know VR, get to know what it does. Experience VR and even in a non-educational format and get excited. It's much easier to make an area feel open and welcoming and a new technology and accessible if the librarians themselves support it. I also encourage those who are on the fence about VR to talk about their peers at other institutions, see what's being done, see how people are playing with it. Many have already done successful outreach and VR programming that their students and faculty enjoy. Librarians can act as outreaches and bridges to many of the faculty staff islands. And we're already in contact with vendors such as Sage and Body Swaps, and we can voice the needs and wants of programming to vendors. While exact program for areas of studies are still a way away, publishers and developers like Sage and Body Swaps have heard the call and are interested in providing VR programming to students and faculty. So I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thank you very much. I'm going to finish off with why virtual reality is a new learning experience, which is an opportunity for us all. So if we quickly cast our eyes to the right of the screen, we're used to coaching, which is very good, but not very scalable. And then we have classroom, a bit more scalable and impact. And then we all know about e-learning and completion rates. And for us, virtual reality sits in between this. So we can make it scalable with AI personalized feedback, and it's an asynchronized autonomous tool. And on the left, you can have applicable in many different situations. So it's, we just booked negotiations with Sage. We do public speaking, breaking bad news in healthcare, job interview simulators. And my last slide is just finishing off with the data that we had with Meta from asking educators where they see VR fitting in. So even if we're not there just yet, the future is definitely exciting. Thank you very much.
We'll see if we can give him a little bit more time at the end.
thanks. Hi. Thanks, everybody. My name is Gretchen Gigan. I'm going to talk about institutional impact intelligence with persistent identifiers, or PIDs. This is nowhere near as sci-fi and cool as everybody else's topic, but I hope you'll learn something. So I work at the Center for Open Science. We're a nonprofit based in the US, and we have a mission to increase openness, integrity, and reproducibility of research. And we do that through three main areas of activity. We have a unit devoted to policy and culture change. We educate, train, and support research communities. We have a meta-science team that conducts research on research to understand how to make it more efficient, how to make it more open and improve things. And I work on our infrastructure and software tools team. And our primary area of work is the Open Science Framework, or OSF. And this is an open source online research platform designed to support researchers openly and transparently to share their work through the whole research lifecycle, from the beginning to the end and back around again, not just publishing the final research publication. So OSF is built around three kind of primary objects. The first are registrations, which are formal declarations of research hypotheses and study plans. And then we have project spaces, which are collaborative spaces for researchers to share any kind of materials they want: data, protocols, methods, outputs, anything. And then finally, we have preprint servers, which I'm sure I don't need to explain. So each of these kind of objects, as I call them on OSF, can have multiple associated files and multiple contributing creators. So this talk is about persistent identifiers, or PIDs. So if you're not familiar with that term, persistent identifier is any identifier that is globally unique and is maintained by an organization that guarantees to keep it viable. So PIDs can be assigned to all kinds of things. In repositories, we're primarily talking about the people who create and contribute to works, the organizations they're associated with, and the objects they produce. So PIDs can then be assigned relationships to each other, making an information graph. So in this graph, the user with this ORCID, which is a type of PID for a person, works for an organization with this ROR ID, which is a PID for an institution. They created this text, which has a DOI, and that text is in turn aggregated into a collected volume with a different PID. The power of graphs is that we can then infer and expand the relationship. So if I know the text was written by this user, and the user is affiliated with this institution, I can by inference associate the text with the institution. So creating graphs of PIDs based on relationships between identifiers instead of just flat records allows you to answer more complex questions. So in the graph, the question is, I want to know all the digital objects connected to a research object, which is the text that's in the top left. So that has direct links to two specific objects, but those in turn have relationships to even more objects. So in addition to this, if I aggregate records from multiple sources that use the same identifiers, the same PIDs, more information can be pieced together into a larger and larger graph. So by sharing our data, OSF is helping to build that bigger and better overall graph. And since OSF itself is multidisciplinary and multi-institutional, we can reveal relationships that otherwise might be difficult to surface. So we work with institutional and academic partners to encourage the adoption of PIDs like ORCIDs and DOIs in the content they create in OSF. And we have an institutional program to additionally add ROR IDs for those institutions. And the goal here is to make it easier for the institution to find the research that's associated with them, to reduce reporting and compliance burdens, as well as being able to answer those more complex questions. So this is just an example of a larger network graph. This is bibliometric data about journals showing connections between titles with authors. And so it's showing that some authors are publishing in journals that are in completely different disciplines, that we may not have realized that these authors had this kind of scope across discipline. So graphs with this level of breadth and scale are possible through PIDs and networks of shared information. PIDs are so important and powerful that they're #1 on the list of NIH's a list of desirable characteristics for all data repositories. They're also highly ranked on the NTSC's, National Science and Technology Council's list. They appear on the UK Research and Innovation, UKRI's Open Access Policy, Plan S requirements, Core Trust Seal requirements. So they're very highly valued by these standards and regulatory bodies. NIH defines the PID requirement as citable, unique, persistent identifier that points to a persistent landing page that remains accessible even if the data set is deaccessioned or no longer available. So in OSF, we use 4 primary types of PIDs: ORCID for user, ROR for organization, DOIs through both DataCite and Crossref for different kinds of works, and the Crossref Funder Registry for funding bodies. If you're not afraid to look at code, you can watch this. If you are, feel free to look away. This slide shows how the identifiers actually get into the metadata. So you can see at the top, we're using a ROR ID. We're saying it's a ROR ID. And importantly, at the bottom, we're using relation types. So we're saying how these identifiers are related to each other. So in this one, I can reference another object that's a version, another one that's supplemental, and another one that's cited material. So how this works in OSF, because we share metadata from OSF into other sources, putting PIDs in our data propagates out into other parts of the graph. So in this example, the user has added their ORCID. They then create a preprint, which gets a DOI. Then we mint that DOI through Crossref, and that also sends their ORCID to Crossref. And because their ORCID's in Crossref, now this gets picked up into their ORCID profile. So all the user had to do here was add the ORCID to their profile, and all of this happens automatically by the way that we share data. In another example, this user has added their ORCID, but they've also affiliated with their institution. So this is a project, so we actually registered this through DataCite. And when we share the record with DataCite, we're able to pass along not just that user's name, but their institutional affiliation. So the institution can come back and see what's the output of their faculty. Those examples also show one of the other benefits of using PIDs, which is to hopefully reduce administrative burden. So in these cases, one resource, ORCID, benefited, and DataCite, benefited from the data in our resource, the OSF. So because PIDs always resolve to something, if what they resolve to provides machine-readable data, the full metadata for the resource can be obtained from the PID location and then harvested and reused. So in an ideal scenario, a researcher or administrator only needs to populate metadata in a system one time and can see it propagated down the line. So at OSF, we've just updated our search API, and we're now relying more heavily on PIDs of all kinds. We're working on updated documentation for direct API search, but the search page at osf.io is now using this API. We're also working on standardizing metrics reporting, which will contribute to that graph data. We're going to be using the counter standard for data, which is a little bit different than the journal standard. In general, we're always also working on creating more relationships and identifying more types of data objects. We did a lot of work in the past year to define many types of relationships in our metadata model, basing it on the DataCite metadata schema. And we are ready to start using them and linking more of these PIDs and documents and people and places. We're also contributing back to standards like the DataCite metadata model, helping to define some new categories and new relationships. And we're considering adding new PIDs, such as the Research Activity ID or RAID. And that's it. Those are my PIDs. If you're interested in OSF or our institutional program, there's some flyers here at the front, and I will be here for questions and otherwise. Thank you.